Thank you for your question. Thank you for inviting me here. It's a great honor to be working with Mike and the other colleagues on this topic. As far as the very recent restrictions on the rare earth, I personally perceive it as sort of a strike back. It's like tit for tat against the moves adopted by the Trump administration after the talk in Europe, very recent talk, it should be measured. After measured talk, theoretically, both of us, I believe that we have already got some agreements. There's going to be sort of trade war truce. But unfortunately, there were several moves from Chinese perspective unacceptable, which signals to China is like launching a new wave of offense. So we have to fight back to discourage that kind of movements, including adding the sort of the fees on the Chinese ships and more restrictions, the expansion of several dozen Chinese companies of the entity list, blah, blah, that kind of things. But from my personal understanding, there's a disconnection between Trump administration, the cabinet, and the bureaucratic system. Because the bureaucratic system is doing things routinely and gradually, and maybe recently they got the process to say, hey, we are going to charge that fee on the Chinese ships, and we are going to put these companies into lists. But maybe to some extent, the Donald Trump himself, he may know, but he did not aware that these moves, these new moves, would be perceived by China's side as violating the agreement, harder strike in Madrid. That's the situation. That's my understanding. Not necessarily right, but that's my observation. Then come to the topic of the title of this session, Economic Outlook of 2030. I believe there will be several factors, most importantly, influence the economic performance and the market. Number one, of course, China-US game, big power game in trade, tariffs, in rare earth versus chips, in AI competition, that kind of things. All the things are comprehensively involved in the match or in the competition or, in China's words, struggle between the two powers. But more than that, there will be another element which is relatively independent, but also related to the first one, is about the AI bubble. Now, that's another topic that I would want to bring in, because nowadays we happen to be at or near the peak period of an obvious AI bubble, because there are a lot of the indexes. So, for example, very recently we can see that OpenAI and what's the name of the company? Hardware company, which is which company? NVIDIA. Yeah, sorry. In Chinese, we have another Chinese name for it. NVIDIA and OpenAI. Based on that two companies, there are a lot of other more big players get involved, and by binding together through investment, through purchasing of the products and services, they successfully created a big bubble and an AI version of too big to fail. So in the U.S. economy as well as the financial market. So bubble is a natural thing. Financial bubble is a natural thing, especially when we come to such a innovative, brand new thing, technology, changing our life. But if we look at the chart of the Gartner curve, then we are experiencing maybe very close to peak. And I believe in the coming 5 years, because our topic is about 2030, in the coming 5 years, we will have to experience such a boom burst cycle. So we have to deal with that. Number three is about the geopolitical even military thing. It's not only about mainly not about China and the U.S. It's the wars, conflicts in many places. Of course, Russia-Ukraine war, and the Middle East conflict, and some other places. How can we, calm down these fires and make sure that no other bigger players get involved, so that we can avoid the so-called Third World War? That's also very relevant to our economic outlook. Thank you. Actually, just before our session, I tried to, build up a connection with Mike, and it's really awkward that I find that we cannot get connected electronically with each other, because he do not use WeChat and I do not use WhatsApp. This is a very interesting case. Resembles that the whole world is already being divided into two pieces. Although we personally want to connect with each other, want to have sort of cooperation, but because for security reasons, political reasons, for various reasons, the whole world is divided into two pieces, which reminds me about the term created by Stalin, the parallel system. Yeah. So, as Mike just now mentioned about the relationship between tariff and revenue, I may be the first Chinese scholar who publicly speak out the real motivation for President Donald Trump, why he launches such a tariff war against major trade partners, including China. There was an interview on me back in July 1st, 2019. In that interview, I successfully predicted what he's going to do. And my prediction turned out to be quite accurate in many aspects, even about the numbers, 10% base. And it turned out to be right this year, so-called Liberation Day. The real motivation of the tariff is about collecting enough money to support his domestic agenda, tax cut. In fact, what he's trying to do is to impose tariffs on trade partners and poor people, who is the consumer of the imported cheap goods, so that he could collect more than $200 billion per year to fund the tax cut for the rich people, including himself. Okay. Unfortunately, my another prediction turns out to be not that accurate, because when your presidency, the President Joe Biden came to power in China, I predict another prediction, say that during Biden administration, that at least that 4 years, China-U.S. relationship after the dramatic damage during the first President Donald Trump, we are going to witness a sort of rebounds. But unfortunately, it's not an obvious rebounds. It's stagnating. There are no obvious rebounds. But now, in the second term of President Donald Trump's presidency, we are experiencing even more dramatic, like show hand. Yeah? And this time, China's feedback, China's way of dealing with his blackmail, is totally different. China is the only country who stands very bravely against his bullying since April. And so far, there's still a lot of uncertainties. But in the short term, I'm quite optimistic about the future, because we are going to strike a sort of equilibrium. We are going to reach sort of balance, a stable period, because both sides are very tough on many issues. But from long-term perspective, I'm pessimistic, because at the end of the day, you will have to build up your own supply chain. U.S. side will have to build up its own supply chain on core materials, including rare earth and many other things. And the China side will have to build up its own supply chain on chips, Here's a question of how to avoid being the victims when the two elephants are fighting against each other. So there are some speculative players, who could hardly properly evaluate the situation and have poor understanding about themselves. So some of the people will take risky behavior so that they could be, like a gamble. If you are right, you can benefit from both sides. But that's also, the Holland thing is also a very interesting topic, a very hot topic in the Chinese social media. A lot of debates, a lot of discussions. And yesterday I saw a joke, he said the Dutch Minister of Economics, his behavior is sort of the bank robber, like a bank robber, because it's a Chinese company, and everything goes smoothly. There's no substantial risk for European car makers of being took off or supplied with ordinary chips produced by that company. But he, according to some resources, he want to play something between China and the United States on this case. And he robbed a bank. The result is he only carry away the brand, without cash, because everything, in fact, is in China. The brand is the brand, the board of the brand is in Europe. So his premature behavior, frightened a lot of Chinese investors, because several days ago, before I flew to Europe, I brought a European colleague to dozens of Chinese leading investors. And during the question and answer session, one entrepreneur, Chinese entrepreneur, raised a question and said, hey, I have invested a company in Germany. It's already going smoothly 15 years. We are happy with that, but now I have a concern. Should I move my company away from Europe? Because when he see what happens in Holland, he's really concerned about Europeans. He do not care about whether Europe it's German government or Dutch government. Okay, so I will start from the question of whether there is an AI bubble, and what happens and when it happens to burst. Actually, I recently made some comparison between the different approaches of United States and China, who is the most important leading countries investing heavily in AI. Obviously, they have different approaches. The American approach, from my personal understanding, is sort of in China we have a word called 修仙. You try to practice, purify your spirit, so that maybe one day, at the tipping point, suddenly you become a god. Yeah, it's like a tipping point. They try to reach a tipping point earlier than the Chinese. The American practitioners in AI, they are sort of like, we have to compete with Chinese. We are going to be the number one to reach that tipping point, because since then, we are going to, with the assistance of the super smart general AGI, and we could make decisions on almost everything much more smarter than the Chinese. Yeah, that seems to be a decisive win hand, in a game against China. While the China side seems to be a different approach. In China side, I visited some of the AI companies, leading AI companies in China. The majority of them are doing so-called AI plus, which means they are applying AI technologies to substantial factories, substantial, for example, a port, make it a port, everything autonomized, and no man is operating there. Make a factory, 24-hour producing, black light. And very recently, I visited an alumni of our school. who is the owner of an AI company, and he may be the only company in the whole world who is already making profit, net profit, from AI, which produces AI, looks not like human bodies, but like boxes, various boxes. And these boxes can replace the research and development phase for medicine companies. And almost all the major medicine producers are his customers. So they pay huge profit to them because they has their company. That's a crazy thing because the boxes that he produces is kicking professors, PhDs out of job. You know, we all know that's a heavy investment in the research and development process in medical industry, medicine industry, pharmaceutical industry, you know. So that's Chinese approach. We are applying AI to substantial things. They're replacing not normal people, you know, not the normal assistants, but experts, replacing experts in doing things. But at the same time, we also have some companies like DeepSeek, who is following the suit of the US approach, following the suit of OpenAI and ChatGPT approach, trying to do something like AGI. The problem is we make it open source, which means the Chinese DeepSeek company is like a needle following the bubble that created by the OpenAI and NVIDIA. So waiting to punch it at some point. That's a dangerous thing for the US economy and the whole world economy because you can never charge your customers, no matter how you tell the story, how good your production or your services are good. There's always a Chinese company say, hey, I'm going to provide a similar service without charging anything. And if we look back on the statistics on the US real estate financial market, the price divided by net value, that index, every time it goes through 18 years of a bull market, every time. It's like 18 years. And the very recent one started from early January or February of 2009. Okay, how many years, how many months? So it's very close to a new peak. And my imagination, so put things together, my presumption is, so this time, there's still no difference. There will be a needle. It may be the DeepSeek thing, you know, punch in the bubble of the global AI investment. Thank you very much. 2 points. Number one, about the debt issue that people raised and also Mike raised. My personal understanding is that that issue today in either United States or Europe is basically a wrong question. In fact, after 1971, because of the Nixon shock, because of the decoupling between gold and fiat money, the whole world is in now fiat money. The whole game has already been fundamentally changed, that it's fundamentally different from the human history, overwhelming majority of the human history. I say this because I made a statistical study on how the world financial economic system, that system runs, you know. So my argument is, if only it is non-redeemable, so the money issuer do not have the responsibility to refund you with gold or silver, some hard anchor, with a fixed price to buy back the piece of paper that he issues. If only that system works, then there's no worry about the debt. For example, my understanding, US real debt, the federal debt is zero, because no presidency need to buy back this money with the fixed price with gold or silver. But then come to the question, what happens if, as now we are in huge turmoil of the global order, global rules, we are trying to figure out new rules, new game rules. What happens if China and many other developing countries work together to figure out a new money back to the human history tradition, with a hard angle, for example, not necessarily gold, we create a new basket of package with substantial goods, including gold, silver, and oil, gas, and many foods, into it redeemable, which means the issuer of the money have to show the responsibility to pay back substantial goods at a fixed price or relative fixed price. Then the debt become real. Then the United States and the European countries, like Southern European countries, will be in big trouble because their debt against the GDP ratio is more than 100%. And of course, Japan is all in big trouble. Okay, that's the first point that I want to make. Okay. The second thing, very briefly, against the debt, the defense budget thing, as a Chinese scholar, Chinese strategist, researcher, I would be very happy to see that German expenditure on military should strike more than 3.5%. You'd better to reach 5%. If that happens, the world will have a fundamental change because nowadays you do not have a real multipolar system. Nowadays, the structure is a bipolar, which is very, very disliked by the Chinese. Okay, we would like to see a real multipolar. Thank you. Peak. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that means we still got 2 years to go by my maths.
Less than. My suggestion is in maybe only 1 year, you should have to retreat from that kind of gamble.
There you go. Investment advice. Okay.